The day the heart of the world stopped beating. In the pivotal year of 1258, a shadow fell across the world so absolute that the very heart of the Islamic world, a metropolis of unparalleled glory and learning, effectively ceased to beat. For more than 5 glorious centuries since its founding by Caliph al-Mansur in the 8th century, Baghdad had stood not merely as a city, but as the enduring beacon of global science, art, and culture. It was the magnificent, shining capital of the Abbasid Caliphate, a name whispered with reverence across continents, Madinat al-Salam, the city of peace. Its fame extended from the markets of Spain to the courts of China. The intellectual infrastructure of Baghdad was unmatched. The legendary House of Wisdom, Beit al-Hikmah, more than just a library, was the world's preeminent academy, where translators and scholars worked ceaselessly. Its vaults housed millions of precious manuscripts, works rescued from antiquity, alongside original texts on every conceivable subject. Scholars here advanced breakthroughs in algebra, optics, medicine, and celestial mechanics, charting the stars and mapping the earth with an accuracy unknown in the West. Baghdad was the central engine, the very brain of civilization itself. Yet this epoch of unparalleled enlightenment, this city of eternal grace and knowledge, was in the span of just 7 brutal days, reduced to a smoking, desolate landscape of dust and ash. The instrument chosen by history for this monumental destruction was Hulagu Khan, a man whose veins carried the legacy of fire and iron, being the formidable grandson of the legendary Genghis Khan. Hulagu was not acting alone. His mission was sanctioned by his older brother, the great Khan Mongol, who had issued an unyielding decree: march west, and utterly crush any and all independent Islamic powers that dared to oppose the growing dominion of the Mongol Empire. This relentless, westward advance was not merely a campaign. It was an existential conquest. Hulagu's forces had already swept aside resistance in Persia and the Caucasus. Now, at the very apex of the great Khan's enemies, and occupying a position of unmatched symbolic value, stood one name on the scroll of conquest: Baghdad. The city's wealth was legendary. Its fall, necessary for the unification of the Mongol world under one rule. The man who held the keys to Baghdad, the Caliph of the Prophet, was al-Mustasim Billah. Historical accounts paint a tragic portrait: a man deeply devoted to poetry, opulent luxury, and spiritual pursuits, but tragically lacking in military foresight and political realism. His court was decadent, his palace overflowing with gold and fine silks, yet his treasury was bare when it came to defending his people. He had systematically dismantled much of the Caliphate's standing army, replacing discipline with complacency. He ruled a city of incalculable, dazzling wealth, but he had grown dangerously blind to the apocalyptic storm rapidly approaching from the deserts of the east. When Hulagu, through his envoys, delivered a stark and chilling ultimatum demanding the immediate and unconditional surrender of the city and its ruler, the Caliph al-Mustasim made a decision born of fatal hubris. He laughed. He scornfully dismissed the Mongol threat, secure in the mistaken belief that no army in recorded history could ever successfully breach the legendary millennia-old walls of Baghdad. In his arrogance, he issued his own empty threat of divine retribution, a promise his earthly army could not back up. The armies of the Mongols were an entirely different breed of warrior, unlike anything the soft, garrisoned forces of the Caliphate had ever faced. They were not merely a collection of soldiers, they were a force of ruthless, efficient nature. Hulagu commanded an awe-inspiring force, estimated at over 150,000 horsemen and auxiliary soldiers, drawn from every corner of the vast Mongol domain, including Georgian, Armenian, and Chinese contingents skilled in siege engineering. Their strength lay in their discipline, their absolute ruthless efficiency, and a shared doctrine of conquest guided by generations of experience. Their loyalty was not to faith or fortune, but to the Khan. In January 1258, when the first ominous Mongol war banners, the black standards of the Horde, finally appeared on the flat horizon outside the city, the millions of people within the protective walls of Baghdad watched in terrified silence. The collective realization was not one of defiance, but of immediate, paralyzing fear, a chilling awareness that they were not merely witnessing an invasion, but the beginning of the end of their civilized world. The massive, relentless siege began on January 29, 1258. The Mongol army immediately and expertly encircled the city completely, a vast mobile crescent of iron and horseflesh that instantly severed all lines of supply, cutting off the critical flow of food, fresh water, and most importantly, any last vestige of hope. The assault was immediate and terrifying. Massive traction catapults and advanced trebuchets, overseen by skilled Chinese engineers, began a constant barrage, hurling mammoth stones weighing many hundreds of pounds into the outer and inner city walls with relentless precision. The night sky was illuminated by a deadly rain of flaming arrows and naphtha bombs, turning parts of the city into premature infernos. Baghdad's ill-prepared defenders, though fighting with desperate, panicked courage, were hopelessly outmatched. Their obsolete weapons, disorganized command structure, and sheer lack of numbers were no match for the synchronized, cold precision of the Mongol military machine. Within a matter of mere days, the supposedly impregnable Great Walls of Baghdad were systematically undermined, battered, and finally breached at multiple strategic points. The moment the great wooden and iron gates finally fell inward, the siege transitioned into a week-long nightmare. The Mongol soldiers did not march. They poured into the city like a devastating, unchecked flood of violence and destruction. Operating under the brutal Mongol doctrine of collective punishment, they gave no quarter, systemically killing every man, woman, and child they encountered within the walls. For 7 unending days, Baghdad was consumed by fire and blood. The mosques and palaces, the markets and the homes, all burned indiscriminately. The once great Tigris River, the lifeblood of the city, became a vessel of profound tragedy. It ran black, not from the settling of ash and soot, but from the untold thousands of precious books from the legendary House of Wisdom and private libraries, tossed into the water to create makeshift bridges for the horses. Historians recount the horrifying truth. The river literally ran black, with the ink of human knowledge, and red with the blood of human life. The stench of smoke and death hung over the entire region for months afterward. Amidst the slaughter, the foolish Caliph al-Mustasim was dragged out and brought before the grim figure of Hulagu Khan. In a chilling display of psychological warfare, the Khan initially spared his life, only to subject him to a period of cruel public mockery. Hulagu famously imprisoned the Caliph in a room filled with his own gold and jewels, asking him why he did not use this vast treasure to raise an army or hire mercenaries to defend his people who had trusted him. Then, in a cold act designed not just as execution, but as a cruel demonstration of political and poetic justice, Hulagu ordered the final deed. The Caliph was to be rolled tightly within a heavy wool rug or felt carpet and trampled to death by a continuous procession of horses, a specific Mongol method reserved for royalty. This was done to ensure that the Caliph's royal blood would not touch the sacred earth, thereby avoiding any potential superstition or future revolt centered around his grave. The millennium-long symbol of the Islamic world, the highest authority of the Abbasid Caliphate, died in a silent, muffled, and utterly degrading annihilation. By the time the Mongol forces finally moved on, having stripped the city of anything of value and satisfied their brutal decree, the death toll was staggering, conservatively estimated to exceed 200,000 human lives. The physical fabric of the city was erased. The majestic grand mosques, the unparalleled libraries, hospitals, and caliphal palaces, the very structures that had defined the golden age of Islamic civilization, were utterly gone, either leveled by siege engines or consumed by fire. The city that had once held the intellectual and artistic candle against the achievements of ancient Athens and imperial Rome was now nothing more than a smoking, pestilent graveyard. The fall of Baghdad marked the absolute, definitive end of the Islamic Golden Age. The bright light of knowledge and innovation that had illuminated the world during its darkest ages was ruthlessly and deliberately extinguished in a tide of fire and blood. But history persists, and the memory of that day serves as a terrifying, enduring warning. It teaches us that arrogance, political complacency, internal division, and a failure to protect what truly matters can destroy even the most magnificent and established of civilizations. If you enjoyed this video and want more stories like this one, make sure to hit that subscribe button. We've got much more coming.